Welcome. You are watching Immigration and You with Moses Apson. I'm your host, Veronica Apson, and today we are covering fiancé visas. Thank you, Moses, for being here, Mr. Apson.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting topic because fiancé visas is a very popular topic and it may be helpful for a lot of people. So we will discuss all about fiancé visas, what the rules are, what you have to do to prove to win the case, and what happens after you come into the United States. So we will discuss everything on that.
Well, Mr. Apson, where should we begin? How should a immigrant approach filing for fiancé visas?
Well, the first thing is the immigration rules. You have to, within the last 2 years, have physically met with that person. So if they're in, let's say Brazil, you have to fly down there and spend a little time with them. Hopefully you meet their family and you take a lot of pictures, because the job is going to be to prove the relationship. And especially when people are far away from each other, how do you prove it? Mm-hmm. So what you can do is, of course, besides flying there at least once over 2 years, the communication. Communication is extremely important. People have to talk to each other. So you can go on, what's that program? Telephone program.
WhatsApp?
WhatsApp. Go to WhatsApp and it keeps a record of every conversation. So you would be able to print out all the dates that you made the call to prove to them that you are communicating. So that's the way you do it. And you can write letters and text each other and keep records of everything you do, because that's how they're going to approve it, by believing that you do have a real relationship, that it's not a make-believe or anything like that.
So can children accompany you on a K-1 visa? And what are the requirements?
Well, the children must be under the age of 21, and if somebody is sponsoring you on a K visa, you could bring your kids in on a K2, so they could also come in, all of them, with you. Financially, the petitioner here in the United States is going to have to prove that he makes enough money to support the whole family.
Thank you, Mr. Apson. What about the documents and evidence does a immigrant need to provide to support the K-1 visa application for clients who are just entering your offices?
Well, first of all, we have to make sure that this person is not married in the other country. And if they were married, we need the divorce decree, an original divorce decree that's valid. That's one thing. The second thing, we have to prove that the American is really a United States citizen. So you need the birth certificate of that person, or citizenship paper, or the passport. You need that. Then you have to apply on Form I-129F, and you're asking to allow your fiancé to come into the United States to marry you. So that's what's going on here. You're getting permission for that person to travel here to marry you, instead of you marrying them over there.
Well, can someone travel outside of the United States while on a K visa? Are there any restrictions, Mr. Apson?
Well, the restriction is that you cannot travel without permission. So there's a document called advance parole. Once the immigrant enters the United States and we want to travel, we have to file a Form I-131, which is called advance parole.
Okay.
And that the only problem with that is taking a few months, but you would have to file that before you travel. And then you'll be able to leave and come back.
Well, that sounds very helpful for anyone who is watching,
Yeah,
may I say.
it is very helpful. The advanced parole is a wonderful program that helps families, especially if you want to go back there to have a wedding, a party, or anything like that. You can get advanced parole for that. Or let's say your mother or father, they become ill, you want to visit them, you get the advanced parole and to travel back and forth. And it won't affect your application.
So, in the process, are there potential reasons a K-1 visa can be denied? And how can one overcome them?
Well, if you don't really establish the connection between the two, it would get denied. Or if that person who's applying had a previous problem with the Immigration Service, that can cause a denial right there. So you have to go over the case, find out every time that person came into the United States. Because if you come into the United States and you overstay more than 6 months and then leave the country, you're barred for 3 years. If you overstayed for a year or more, you're barred for 10 years, you're not allowed to come in. So that's something that you have to be concerned with.
So, in general, just to, since we described a lot around the K-1 visas, it may be confusing to viewers. Why does K-1 visa stand out amongst other visas, and what makes it special in a nutshell?
Okay, the K-1 visa is good if you want to bring someone, fiance, here, and once they're in the United States with a K-1 visa, they have 90 days to get married. So they must marry within 90 days. Then you have to apply for something called adjustment of status to get the green card here. But the most important thing is to marry within the 90 days. Because if you don't marry within the 90 days, you're not going to be able to adjust status. I've had cases where a person comes in on a K visa, and they don't marry. They have a problem, they have a fight. Years later, they come to my office and say, look, I just got married to this guy. He's an American citizen. Can't I adjust my status now? And I have to say, no, you can't. You came in specifically to marry that one person. When you fail to do that, you violated the law. And then what we have to then do is do consular process. In other words, change the case that they go back home to pick it up. But before they do that, if they've been illegal here more than a year, we have to be very careful that they're not going to get stuck abroad. So what you do is, as soon as the initial papers are filed, you have to then file for a I-601A waiver. It's a special waiver that will allow you to come back quicker than 10 years. Usually the process takes a couple of 2-3 years, and then you leave and you come back, but you have the waiver approved before you leave the United States, which is very important, because what happens if you're abroad and you're at the interview and they decide you need a waiver, then you have to apply for the waiver, but you have to wait there. And it could take a year or 2 years for them to approve that waiver. So you don't want to be stuck out of the country. And I've had this happen where a woman, we got her the interview at the consulate. When she got to the consulate, they denied the case. She called me up crying, saying in Portuguese, "Não me aprovaram." You know, they didn't approve me. And I spoke to her for a while, and I got the letter from the consulate, and apparently what happened, some 20 years back, she went to the consulate to apply for a tourist visa, and when you apply for a tourist visa, you have to prove to them that you're going to go back to your country. So usually if you have a family, children, all that, that's good proof to show them. So this woman showed them a marriage certificate. Turned out that they investigated and that marriage certificate was fake. So they denied the case because she in the past tried to enter the United States with a fake document. And what we had to do is we had to apply for another waiver for the misrepresentation, and she stayed out at that time about 8 months extra to get that approved. So you have to be very careful before you send anyone out of the country. You have to be sure that they're going to be coming back.
So, Mr. Apson, what are the eligibility requirements for a K-1 visa?
First of all, the petitioner must be an American citizen. Can't be somebody with a green card. That's not going to be good enough. You need a fiancé visa. The petitioner must be an American citizen. They must be free to marry, so if they've been divorced, you have to have all the divorce papers. And the person in another country, they have to also be in good standing. They can't have any diseases like COVID or AIDS or anything like that, because you have to do a medical exam over there. And it's almost like getting a green card. You have to go through a process abroad before they give you the fiancé visa. Once you come in, things are a little easier, but as I said before, you must marry in 90 days. Once you get married, then we file adjustment of status, and a few months later, you'll get an appointment for an interview, which will probably take about a year. But you could file for your work permit right away when you come in, so that you can have at least your work permit and a social security number, because you need to work. Everybody needs that.
Thank you for sharing
Sure.
in detail. So how long does it typically take to obtain a K-1 visa, Mr. Apson?
Well, it's been taking longer and longer over the years. It used to take maybe 6 months. Now it could take a year or more. But it's still good because it's going to be quicker than if you go abroad, get married over there, and then try to bring your spouse in. Or maybe there's not much of a difference. That's the dilemma we face today. The fiancé visa, if it takes too long, you might as well forget the fiancé visa and just apply a marriage case. Go down there, get married, and then come here and we file the case, and in about a year or so that they would be approved. So I don't see a fiancé visa in a lot of cases being much of a benefit. It's probably better to just go there and get married and then come to the office.
So can a fiancé or spouse work in the United States while on a K-1 visa?
Well, not on a K-1 visa, but as soon as they marry and they file the case with the immigration for the green card, they will get a work permit. And when you get the work permit, you get the social security number, and then you can work. So you have to do something extra to get that. Otherwise, you'd have to just wait until the end of the process, which could take more than a year. So you would apply for the work permit.
So, Mr. Apson, what are the next steps after a fiancé and spouse enters the United States on a K-1 visa?
Well, as I explained earlier, they have to get married within the 90 days. Once they marry, you prepare what's called an adjustment packet, which is Form I-130, I-485. Medical exam, proof that you're living together, and you submit everything to the Immigration Service. And if you're lucky, you'll get an approval without even an interview. Lately, that's what's been happening. We're getting the green card without interviews, which is fantastic.
That sounds great. They are becoming more lenient in the process.
Well, what's happened is that they are so behind in the process that they're doing everything to expedite the case. It's the same thing in deportation cases. In these days, you have a case in court. Before you go to the interview, you get a call from the government's lawyer asking if you want to agree to close the case. You follow? So they're in court, and you get an offer to close the case. So the lawyer has to be very careful here, because if the case is very good, you don't want to close it. But if the case is very bad, yes, you want to close it. They close it, but you could always reopen it if you want in the future. For example, if you apply political asylum, the case doesn't look good at all, and you agree to close the case. Next year, there's something else happening in your country, and there's a change in the political situation there. You could file again. You could file political asylum again when that happens. It's something new. And so it's a good deal. This is called parole. They parole him. They parole the person in, and it's an excellent situation when you get prosecutorial discretion. That's what it's called, prosecutorial discretion. And they're allowed to do this. The judge can do it, or the government can do it. The difference is, if the judge closes the case, the person continues with a work permit. But if the government and with your lawyer close the case, agree to close, you don't continue with a work permit. That's why you have to be careful that you've already applied for the new work permit. I don't know if you know this, but the new work permits are good for 5 years. So if you get a work permit and then you close the case, you'll still have your work permit. And who knows, maybe, and if you get married or some change in the law.
Well, Moses Apson, we are headed to break. We have a lot of callers calling in, and we've just went through a lot of good questions that you have successfully answered. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll take a break right now. So I called you Moses.
Quem vai mudar precisa de quem cuide bem do que se tem. Nesse momento tão importante, a Portugália é seus. Cuida bem do que é seu. A Portugália é mais que confiança. A Portugália é certeza. Sua mudança vai chegar bem, vai mudar pro Brasil. Vai de Portugália é seu.
A Portugália é mais que confiança. Portugália é certeza. Vai mudar pro Brasil. Vai de Portugália Sales.
Com mais de 30 anos de experiência ajudando a comunidade brasileira nos Estados Unidos, o escritório do Dr. Moisés Apsan anuncia que seu novo escritório em Pompano Beach está aberto para atender suas necessidades com a Justiça Americana, atendimento em português, inglês e espanhol. Aqui você pode confiar.
Do the same questions.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Immigration NU with Moses Apson. I'm your host, Veronica Apson. And today we have a lot of people calling in, asking questions. I wanted to confirm with you guys that if you want your questions asked, call in and we will make sure to get it on our next show. Anytime we have a show, we will have a little time afterwards that we answer your messages. So if we could get the first message rolling, please do that. Thank you, Joan, in the back.
One thing, Veronica, just to be clear.
We're live.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Just to be clear, that a person can call today live and we can speak together, and it can be done in Portuguese, Spanish, or English, in any of the three languages.
sounds good.
Olá, Dr. Apson. Meu nome é Bruno e eu gostaria de saber quais são os próximos passos depois que minha noiva entrar nos Estados Unidos com visto K1. Obrigado.
Ok, Bruno. O que acontece quando a pessoa entra aqui, o visto tem o valor de 90 dias. Eles têm que casar em 90 dias. Isso é uma coisa muito importante. Depois que eles casaram, nós podemos ir para a imigração e aplicar para o Adjustment of Status. Isso é para receber o Green Card. Então, primeiro você entra com o visto de noivo, você casa e depois você dá entrada no processo. Agora, se uma coisa acontece e você não casa durante esses primeiros 90 dias, pode ser um problema, porque um dia no futuro a pessoa casa com outra pessoa e vamos falar que eles querem receber o Green Card. Eles vão para o advogado e falam, olha, eu entrei com visto K1, mas eu nunca casei com ela. Nós tínhamos uma grande briga e separamos, mas já passou 2 anos, eu estou aqui, eu casei com uma americana, eu quero fazer o processo. E aí eu tenho que dar a informação que eles não gostam, que eles perderam o direito de receber o Green Card dentro dos Estados Unidos. Nós temos que fazer um outro processo que chama Consular Process. Então nós temos que trabalhar com o consulado americano, se é no Brasil, e transferir o caso para lá. Mas o que acontece agora, por razão que essa pessoa ficou ilegal aqui, vai precisar esse perdão 601A, porque quando uma pessoa fica ilegal mais de 1 ano e essa pessoa ficou ilegal 2 anos, quando ele sai do país, essa pessoa sai do país, eles não podem voltar para 10 anos. Então precisa esse perdão que vai eliminar esse problema e a pessoa pode ir para o seu país e volta em 30 dias. Então tem que tomar cuidado com isso. Yes.
So what is our next question on our list?
Ei, boa tarde, meu nome é Larissa. Eu gostaria de saber se a minha noiva, ela pode trabalhar com o K1 Visa nos Estados Unidos.
Sim, eu falei sobre isso pouco tempo atrás. Não pode trabalhar automático, mas depois que eles entram, eles têm que aplicar para o permissão de trabalho, formulário I-765, e o processo demora uns meses e recebe permissão de trabalho. Quando recebe a permissão de trabalho, tem que ir na oficina de seguro social e conseguir o Social Security Number, o número. E com esses 2 documentos pode trabalhar aqui. Então, essa é a resposta.
That sounds good. And looks like we can have time for one more call. Is that what I hear? One more call. Thank you everyone for taking the time to call in with your questions. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have any calls from today, call in live. We have one more slot for today, but we are
Buenas
definitely...
noches, mi nombre es Marisol y quería saber si mis hijos pueden acompañarme con una K1 visa y cuáles son los requerimientos para traerlo a ellos. Gracias.
Sí, usted puede traer sus niños aquí. Los niños tienen que tener menos de 21 años de edad y ellos tienen que probar que son sus niños de verdad, el certificado de nacimiento, y puede entrar junto con usted. Entonces es importante. Ahora, cuando usted entra aquí y usted casa con a pessoa aqui, o americano que você casou tem que aplicar separado para cada um. Entende? Então, você entra com visto K1, o americano tem que aplicar para você e fazer uma aplicação para cada criança que você tem separado. E a única coisa é que você tem que casar com ele antes que a criança alcance 18 anos de idade. Se isso acontece, a criança pode aplicar para o Green Card também. That's it, Veronica.
I think that's what concludes our show for today. Like we said, I was speaking earlier that anyone can call in live in Portuguese, English, and in Spanish. Anyone who called in today and didn't get their call shared, we will move it forward next week. And I just want to thank you again, Moses Abson, Mr. Abson, thank you so much
Thank you,
for having
Veronica.
this time to answer questions from your community.
Sure, it's very enjoyable, and we've been doing this for 25 years at least, and we've answered thousands of questions, and I believe it's helpful for the people, the community, to get their answers straight from a lawyer. Because what's happened, there are a lot of non-lawyers playing around as immigration lawyers, and they make a lot of mistakes. I have a case where a client went to a translation company here in Newark and prepared the form for this couple who the woman entered legally, married an American citizen. You would think that would be an easy case. But there's a question there in the application. It says, when did you start working? And he said, the foreigner said, I started working the same week. I got a job right away. I always work. And that is a problem. Because if a person came in on a tourist visa, they cannot work here without permission. Once you file for your green card, then you get a work permit, then you can do it. But if within the first 90 days you apply for your green card or get married and apply for your green card, the immigration is going to consider that a fraud, and you're going to get involved with something. So what happened, when I looked at the papers, and I was very happy that she hadn't filed it, and I noticed that they put down that they started working the week they came in. So I said, are you sure? Because this is against the law. Think back. Maybe you waited 2 or 3 months before you started working. And the person was smart. She said, yeah, we began working about 4 months after we entered. I said, okay. And then the case became a good case. That's why you need a lawyer to kind of go over it with you, find the problems, and try to fix it before you. And you can't save money with these companies. They don't charge that little. And then if they make a mistake like that, it becomes, if they had gone through with it, that case, and I hadn't spotted it, and they did it on their own, they would be denied for fraud. Then they would need a special fraud waiver, and this case would go on for years and years. So take it for what it's worth. Always go see an immigration attorney if you're doing any immigration work. Until next time.
Until next time. Thank you very much.